All right. So please tell my class who you are and where you work.
My name is Lauren Leemaster, and I'm a first grade teacher at Marley Elementary in Anne Arundel County.
Okay. And I picked you to do this interview because I know you've done Dibbles before with your students and you're required to do them. So my first question is, do you think Dibbles is useful for your students? Why or why not?
No, I do not think that it's useful to the students really at all. The scores are only seen by the teachers and administration, so the students and the parents don't even know how they scored on Dibbles testing. We can talk about it during conferences, but that's about all we can do. We can't discuss any number scores.
So does it really do anything for the students? Or?
No, it's not reflected on their report card. So like I said, nobody else sees it except for the teachers or the administration.
Okay. How much do you think is spent on Dibbles for your school? Because I know I asked you before if you knew the budget, and you said you didn't, so just kind of give me an estimate.
I don't know exactly how much is spent on it, but I'm sure it's a lot because of all the materials. Each student gets a test book each year, K through 2, that they are given the test. And just the training, there's costs for that. And then also the school has a budget for substitutes. So not only do they have to pay for the test itself, but they have to pay for the substitutes. They're not provided to us through the county.
Oh, so when you're doing the Dibbles test, someone has to take over your class?
Yep.
Okay. So how much training did you have to go through in order to give these tests?
In order to give the students the Dibbles tests, I had to watch a video, but I was also hired my first year a week before school started, so it was a little bit different for me. I know they had an in-service training in the school, but it's a video with step-by-step instructions on how to give the test. It took about an hour, and I did it after school. And then they give you a test book, and you just go through the manual with the instructor. And then the test book tells you exactly what you have to say while you're giving the test. But the manual pretty much tells you everything, on how to score it and how to give the test. And then once you're trained, you can give the test as many times before the format is changed. So, when I was trained on it, they had just upgraded the format to the Dibbles Next. So I was trained on Dibbles Next, not just the regular Dibbles that...
Are you required to do it a certain amount of times throughout the year, or just as many times as need be?
Well, that's another question that you asked me. But yes,
I couldn't remember.
It's 3 times a year.
Okay. Yep, that was my next question, but it also says how much time does it normally take for the test.
So, we're required to give the students the test 3 times a year. So in first grade, each test is different. So kindergarten is tested on different things than first grade. First grade's tested on different things than second grade. So, in first grade, the first test is different from the second and third. So in the first test, the first part is the letter naming fluency. So they just go through with a bunch of letters, and they have to give you the name and the sound. And then, or just the name of it. And then the correct letter sounds and whole words read are for nonsense words, so make-believe words. And they have to say the whole word. So, and then in the second and third test, the students are tested on the correct letter sounds and whole words for nonsense words, and DORF, which is the oral reading fluency. So they're given a passage, and they have to read as much of the passage as they can in a minute, and then they retell you what they've just read. So the test itself takes pretty much an entire day for your whole class to be tested. And then, of course, if you have kids that are absent, you have to test those kids when they come back. But we're only given a substitute for the half day. So we finish probably about most of our kids during that time. and then the rest we have to finish on our own. So it's 1 minute for each section and 25 kids, so it takes a pretty long time.
My next question is, do you think Dibbles takes away from your teaching? Which sounds like it does.
Yeah. So it does take away from valuable instruction time. So not only are we spending time preparing the students, because you obviously want your kids to be on that core level, so you're sitting there like giving letters for them to give the sounds, then turning it into whole words, then trying to read passages. So you're building up those skills, but then it's taking away from that like natural reading in a small group setting, because you're kind of like
Sounds
drilling.
More like drill.
Yeah, you're drilling all those skills into the kids when they could just be using different reading strategies to read on their level. So they're losing that small group time and the whole group time, because you're spending it a lot on the skills that you need for Dibbles.
Mm-hmm.
And then like with my above grade level students, instead of doing novels, I'm sitting here giving them nonsense words and seeing how many they can do in a minute, when they should be doing novels and book discussions and things like that. And then with our SLOs this year, which are required, and I don't know if you've heard about them, but
we started doing them in my place.
So our SLOs, we're using the Dibbles for our baseline data, and then we're tracking all of the kids that are either like intensive or strategic on Dibbles. And so not only are we like pressured just for Dibbles, but now we have this SLO that we're trying to meet these goals too, and it's like we're focusing more on meeting those goals rather than having the kids reaching certain levels in reading. So it's a lot of pressure on the teachers and the students. And we're giving the tests to the students in the hallway with the substitutes in our class. So it's taking away from our instruction with our kids. They're left with a substitute for the day. And I mean, everybody knows that you're not really doing the activities you would be teaching with your kids with a substitute, because it's just not going to work out the way you wanted it to.
Right.
So, and then like I said before, we're only given half a day, so anything else that we don't finish, we have to finish in our classroom. So,
which also takes away.
Yeah, so basically during my small group instruction time, I'm not doing that small group, I'm just pulling kids back to do their testing.
Got it.
Yeah.
So my next question is, how soon do you get the results back from Dibbles? Because we heard it takes, for Park at least, it takes a whole year to get your stuff back. We were curious to see if it's the same for Dibbles.
No, with the Dibbles testing, you get the scores right away. So you actually calculate the scores yourself when you're giving the test. So, like, each section is being calculated, and then, which I think I talked about this.
I was going to say my next question is scoring, so you can just talk about that. That's fine.
But in order to see like the graph and where your kids are, like intensive, strategic, or core, you give your books, the student books that you actually like scored and wrote all over, to the reading teacher, and then they put the scores online, and then she'll give you back like the printed out graph and table that tells you like exactly what they scored and where they fall. And then, did you want to ask the last question?
I mean, you could just talk about it since we brought it up.
So you're scoring each student based off of the 3 sections that I told you about. So for the letter naming fluency, you just calculate how many letters they say correctly in a minute. And that's just, you're just counting them up. And then you have to meet a certain number in order for them to be considered strategic or core. And then for the correct letter sounds and the whole words read, you're calculating each correct letter sound they say, and the whole word read is only considered to be correct if they give you the word without giving you the sounds. So like if the word is Mac and they tell you Mac, you can't count that as being a whole word read because they said the sounds first. So we try to tell them to sound it out in their brain first and just give us the word, because they give you just the word, you count the letters and the sounds, which is silly.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, but that's just how it works. So that is another thing. Like, you're constantly telling them, don't give me the sounds, just give me the words.
Which is opposite of how they're usually instructed to use a strategy.
Exactly. So that strategy you basically have to forget. You can't sound and blend because you just have to give the word. And then for the dwarf section, that oral reading fluency, you're scoring how many words they read correctly in a minute. And then the retelling is you just count, like, you kind of make tick marks on how many words they're telling you as they're retelling the story that pertain to the story. So if they're, like, off topic and telling you something that's not happening in the story, even though they're talking to you, you can't track that as being considered a retell. So then once you have all the completed sections, you add up the scores and then you circle the middle. So, like, if they had in the 3 sections, or they have, like, 3 passages that they have to read. So, like, if they only read 20 words in the first passage, then they read 26, and then they read 32, you would circle the 26, and that would be their, like, median score. And then that's what they go off of to tell you if it's intensive, strategic, or core.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.